Hello and welcome to D.O.P.E Conversations. We are about halfway through our season and I just realized I never explained what D.O.P.E stands for, so I'm going to take a moment and explain that to you. So the D stands for determined, because I feel like everybody that I have on the show is determined in their fields. The O is optimistic, because you have to be optimistic when you're doing the work that we do. The P is productive, because PV produces productive people. And the E is empowered, because if you do the D.O.P., you gotta be empowered. So I hope that helps you, and now I hope you know that you're a part of the D.O.P family. So today we have two special guests, and we're going to be talking about community development. So first we have on Tiffany D. Thomas. She is the assistant professor in our community development department here at Prairie View A&M. But she is also the city councilwoman for Houston in District F. So welcome. Thank you. And then we also have on Daryl Johnson, and I have him on because he's one of our about to be graduate students in the master's program of sociology here at PVAMU. So we wanted to hear what they had to say. And the other thing about Daryl that has him on this show is that he used to be a lobbyist, and we'll talk about that, but he also is a mayoral candidate for Prairie View, the city. So I wanted to talk to them about community development in the big city of Houston, but also in rural areas and things that we can do to be involved. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. So first I wanted to ask you, one, what exactly got you into community development? Because you do it in two different roles.
Sure, so I'm not positive we have enough time to tell that story,
okay.
But I will share the significance of community development on our campus and in the state.
Okay.
So Prairie View is the only historically black college in the nation, and we are the only institution in Texas with a graduate community development program. We're also noted as one of the first in academia to have one. So we come with 22 years of academic credibility and producing productive people to go back into their neighborhoods, city government, and nonprofits to influence what that looks like. And so for me, it was curiosity.
Okay.
And I think anyone that's involved in any level of community, they must be curious, right? They must be paying attention to either why do we have something or why do we not have something.
Right.
And so for me, that has been a series of life events that has led me to this campus. And so I'm glad that we're on the Hill today, having this campus, but I'm very proud of the work that we're doing at the institution and also at the city of Houston.
And for the people in the audience and the viewers that may be listening, what exactly is community development? Because it sounds very cut and dry to the point, but explain to someone that has no idea what that is, what does that mean?
Well, I would actually differ and say most people experience it as very broad, right?
Okay.
It's just a blanket name for a variety of people. So some people come to this work looking at it as economic development, and oftentimes you'll hear people say, we want a grocery store. And the grocery store is the driver for development, which isn't always true.
Okay.
Development could be financial literacy. Community development can be a variety of things. And that's, we have a portfolio of courses that encompasses everything from cultural heritage to historic preservation, also to land development and understanding how to write a financial deal for real estate transactions.
Awesome.
So community development is, in our program, it's a 360 model. And that's what we're preparing students to do. So the way that it shows up in the city happens in a variety of ways, through housing, economic development, job training, all of those things. And so for me, I would like to think that people who are interested in community development, it's more of a personal spiritual call. I think anyone who is assigned to people, that is something that something larger than you is calling you to go work on behalf of other people. This is not something you do because you just like it, because it's not always I like it day, right? It's a call and it's a requirement. It's something that pulls on you. And anyone that says, I want to serve people that I don't even know, but I want to serve this neighborhood, preserve this neighborhood, I think there's a personal commitment, a spiritual commitment to that work, and I think our students get that too.
Wow. Now, that was an amazing answer, and that will take us into our first commercial. So when we come back, we can dissect what Tiffany has shared with us and ask Daryl some questions as well. So we'll be right back after the break.
STEM is precise, no margin for error.
Dare to forget that. Dare to have fun with it. Get weird with it. Dare to send those old STEM theories flying past the neighbor's house into outer space. Dare to program something internet-breaking, record-breaking. Dare to blow their minds. Dare to learn the difference between sedimentary and metamorphic rock. Go find those rocks. Dare to keep daring. Dare to STEM. Check out She Can STEM to get started.
What do an aerospace engineer, cancer immunologist, and bat scientist all have in common? We all have cool jobs in STEM fields. Whether it's building robots or learning to code, girls everywhere are finding their passion for science, technology, engineering, and math through positive role models and mentors. So dare to dive in, get connected, and explore. You never know what your future may hold. Learn more about these and even more cool jobs at shecanstem.com. What do an aerospace engineer, cancer immunologist, and bat scientist all have in common? We all have cool jobs in STEM fields. Whether it's building robots or learning to code, girls everywhere are finding their passion for science, technology, engineering, and math through positive role models and mentors. So dare to dive in, get connected, and explore. You never know what your future may hold. Learn more about these and even more cool jobs at shecanstem.com.
So welcome back. Tiffany has given us a great explanation of community development. So that brings me to my first question for you all. What is the starting point to changing our communities? Some of our communities have been in existence for decades, centuries, and some of our communities are brand new, and all of them need some type of development. So how do you start?
Sure, that's a really interesting question, and so I'm going to reference a book that we refer in our program. It's called Dr. Claude Anderson is the author of Powernomics, and in Powernomics he defines that there's a difference between a neighborhood and a community. And so I think language is really important.
Right.
And shout out to the Toni Morrison Writing Center. Toni Morrison's noted for saying that we do have language that we can craft. So when we talk about community, we speak about it so broadly, when most of the time we're talking about our neighborhoods. So often people talk about, follow your passion. And I think that's important. But I would like to offer to listeners, what's the thing that pisses you off?
Okay.
The thing that pisses you off can ultimately be the driver of how you frame public policy, right? The thing that wakes you up like, why are our drains we don't have the same drainage system? Why don't we have the same housing stock? Why are our schools potentially on the list to always close? What's the thing that pisses you off about what you don't have? Could ultimately be the path of how you get started. Because it's not always about your passion, right? Many of us, and I would say myself, found myself in community meetings asking similar questions. For me, I was an active member of the Urban League, Houston Area Urban League, where I cut my teeth and learned about economic development. I learned about housing. I learned about jobs. And I was asking questions after a series of natural disasters, Rita, Katrina, wondering how Black families in the area were more at risk for losing their homes, more at risk for not receiving the same federal assistance for recovery. And so that, that curiosity that I talked about, that's what really started for me. So I think for anyone that's applicable, passion is great, but you'll be surprised what passivity does for you in your life.
I like that, because that's usually the thing that keeps you up at night.
Correct.
So what do you have to add to that as far as how do you get started to work and make change in your community or your neighborhood? Because that language does matter.
Well, in the community of Prairie View, first I have to say amen.
I mean, you know first.
In the community of Prairie View, the city is 50 plus years old, and we've yet to have an anchor business to build around. But the one thing that I know that is a fact, if the city does not grow smart and effectively, the university will be stalled.
Okay. So there's a relationship there.
There's a marriage, not a parent-child relationship, but a marriage where we should both be giving 50-50 instead of constantly looking to the university for the ultimate leadership.
Oh, okay.
We should look to the university. And your program, my hat's off to you. We can use that to grow our community, but we have to roll our sleeves up and do some things for ourselves.
So what I'm hearing you saying is not all on Prairie View to lead this relationship. You're saying that it has to be a mutual relationship, that we're both doing something. Okay.
Absolutely.
So that brings us to the next question that I have for you all. How do you build the necessary relationships to create or have a positive change?
That's a really good question. You know, I think sometimes we lead with the assumption that relationship does not exist, right? Because relationship isn't showing up in the form that we think it should. And, you know, as a faculty member, the university has been very open with discussing our strategic plan and having faculty and staff contribute to that. And one of the things that I, most noted, the president created this, to your point, this advisory group with, the city of Prairie View, Waller County, having those stakeholders, because it is a marriage to that point, because the left hand and the right hand must operate together. So I think relationship, we have to get out of the mindset that it doesn't exist because, one, we don't know what's going on. I often tell people, just because you're not aware doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right.
Right? There's a whole lot of stuff that's happening that we're not familiar with.
Right.
But then also, it goes back to curiosity. Well, then if you don't see it, well, where's the question? Where's the inquiry, right? How are you inserting yourself in that conversation? Attending a meeting, hosting a meeting, scheduling with, candidates. It's a wonderful opportunity for candidates to, be pressed on those questions, right? Because there's residents in the area, and this is a great time for residents to say, well, what say you? And then how can we do this together? So I think, relationship building, it's something natural. We already do it. We have examples throughout time about how we're relational with each other, how we organize, the civil rights movement, Black Lives Matter, just even fighting for making sure that we had our own schools and our own facilities. We do relationship building well. I think it's about making sure that we are maintaining those relationships and then putting a demand on those relationships. Because we can be in a relationship with each other, but if the relationship ain't yielding, the math has to math.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So when you think about the relationship for a student to their university, what do you think? How do you build that relationship after? Now, because you're about to graduate. You're about to be gone.
Crossed, prayers up.
So what relationship will you have going forward?
I believe, first of all, let me say, I have absolutely loved my HBCU experience.
Good.
And anybody that asks me, it's the first thing that comes out of my mouth. But at this point, the relationship should also be financial. The first thing I, as a graduate, and anyone else as a graduate, should do is to join your alumni chapter.
Yes.
But not just join your chapter, be a part of the change that you want to see.
Right.
And I think that's how that relationship should continue.
For sure.
Yeah, I think alumni are very important in making sure that the next generation does not have to deal with the things that we were pissed off about. So I think you're right. It goes beyond just funding, it goes action. So thank you for saying that. And what myths do you hear about community development that kind of ruffle you up like, okay, now that's not right? That's kind of dreamland ideas.
You know, community development is very complex. It's nuanced. It's not a Band-Aid fix. So even when we look at housing and what we're doing, so as a district council member for the city of Houston, I represent the West Side. Shout out to the West Side, the best side of Houston.
And that's Ailey?
That's Ailey,
Okay.
West Chase, Tanglewild, Westmont, Briar Meadow, and the historic and original Piney Point, which is a remnant of a freedman's town.
And I used to stay over that area. My daughter, when we first moved here, went to Smith Elementary.
Yeah.
So yes, I do. I know that area very well.
Yes, very well. So that's the West Side, right?
Okay.
Beloved West Side. But also in my capacity as a council member, I serve as chair of the Housing and Community Affairs for the city.
Okay.
So housing, homelessness, veteran affairs. So our disaster recovery, all of that, it's very nuanced, right? And I'll just make a point about misconceptions of what government should be doing. So Hurricane Harvey was in 2017. We all remember that. If it had not been for Hurricane Harvey in Houston and Harris County, the region would not have received the amount of federal dollars that, unfortunately, the city of Houston has not received flooding mitigation dollars for that. But I go on to say that we had 64 households that could not qualify for the federal funding because they had title issues. They had tax delinquency. We had 94 households that they didn't have the clear title. And so I remember one of my first public sessions as a council member, a brother came in complaining that he had applied for the housing recovery program and he could not get any help. Mind you, it's 2020 by this time. Harvey was 2017. And I'm reading the backup, and my first thought was, we're not doing what we need to do, right? Of course the city is not. Of course the department is not. But I'm reading the backup and I realized that he didn't have the deed. And he says, everybody knows my mama gave me this house.
I was just about to ask you that.
I've been in this house 25 years, and I teach cultural heritage and preservation. We go through this. I said, he's an heir. And I remember the council member that sits to my left says, I didn't know that was a thing. And I said, yes, it's a thing culturally, right? Because we have such a complicated history with land. And so now when we look at these historic black neighborhoods that possibly have not received that investment, now I hear it with a different ear. I see it differently. I'm like, I wonder if they're an heir property. I wonder if they have the clear deed. So a lot of that stuff is nuanced because it's easy for the news to pick up and say, I'm still living in mold. I'm still without recovery, when actually the federal policy does not incorporate any cultural practice of how we live. So the thing that pisses us off, right, and how we operate culturally as black people, everybody know Mama and Papa gonna give somebody that house, and they may not have a will. They may not.
It's just a verbal
it's
understood.
Everybody knows in the family. I know in my family, I'm gonna take that house. So, but then what happens when the next storm comes? Because it will. So when we add up the 64 that has more than $5 on delinquents tax, when we add up the 94 that don't have the deed, the amount of wealth that community leaves, the amount of generational wealth that's unable to be transferred, right? That story is not told. That's some of the work we're doing in the classroom, but we're also addressing that at the city and sharing that message so leaders like us can start having those conversations in our homes. We need to get a will. We need an estate plan, because it's one thing to say I'm a first-time home buyer as a black woman or a black man in the family, and that's our wealth. But what do you want your legacy to be? Right? After the first time, you have to start thinking about legacy building with acquiring property, and that's where we're at. So it's nuanced, it's complicated, and the city is doing all that we can in order to address that.
And see, what I'm hearing Tiffany say is that once we get that house and start building generational wealth, we have to have a blueprint for those generations after us so that we can bring back and keep that wealth.
Absolutely.
So we're going to go to commercial, and then we're going to come back and we're going to finish this discussion. And Daryl, I have some questions for you on a rural area. So come back after the break so you can continue to hear this great discussion. Thank you.
STEM is precise, no margin for error.
Dare to forget that. Dare to have fun with it. Get weird with it. Dare to send those old STEM theories flying past the neighbor's house into outer space. Dare to program something internet-breaking, record-breaking. Dare to blow their minds. Dare to learn the difference between sedimentary and metamorphic rock. Go find those rocks. Dare to keep daring. Dare to STEM. Check out She Can STEM to get started.
What do an aerospace engineer, cancer immunologist, and bat scientist all have in common? We all have cool jobs in STEM fields. Whether it's building robots or learning to code, girls everywhere are finding their passion for science, technology, engineering, and math through positive role models and mentors. So dare to dive in, get connected, and explore. You never know what your future may hold. Learn more about these and even more cool jobs at shecanstem.com.
Good morning, everyone. It's Jade Simone along with
Welcome back. I don't know about you, but I have been so excited. I want to say thank you so much. Tiffany is dropping gems. If you haven't watched it, and if you are watching it, you can rewatch it again on PVAMU TV. But Daryl, I have some questions for you, because we know that you're running for the mayor of Prairie View. And when is the election, please?
The election is May 7th.
Oh, that's around the corner.
Right
so
around
you
the
need to get ready to go vote.
Yes, please.
So what are some of the things that you are on your priority as the future mayor of Prairie View? I'm going to claim it for you.
As you claim it. I want to piggyback off of Councilperson Thomas. We need to, one of the first things that I want to do is to put a cap on the taxes that seniors pay. It is unfair to our most precious gems in the community. As their taxes go up, their salary stays the same, you now lose your generational wealth to tax sales. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And not only is it unfortunate, it's wrong for us to do the citizens in their twilight years that they would have to worry about paying taxes.
Yeah, I can agree, because you're right. They're on a fixed income, and what they do have should be preserved for the next generation to be able to thrive. So when you think, what even made you want to run for mayor?
We were not making, in my opinion, in this community, we were not making kitchen table decisions.
Okay.
We were paying for the things that we wanted and then begging for the things that we need. And as a taxpayer, that's what pissed me off.
Hey, that's your point, huh?
Yeah.
And so, my father always told me, to whom much is given, much is also required. And in my case, very much has been given.
Good. That's good. And I think it is important that we give back, and it's important that we take care of the elders in our community. In closing up, I want to ask, what are you working on now that we can follow? Where can we follow you? Because this was dynamic. I'm going to make sure, I know I am, but I'm going to make sure that I am following you on Twitter so I get all your tweets.
Oh, my tweet is, it's fun. I play on Twitter. So you can find me, of course, at Northwest Campus, our other satellite campus where I teach my classes. And you can find me, of course, at City Hall, Tuesday's public session, Wednesdays at 9 to vote. I'm on social media. It's at Tiffany for a Leaf.
Okay.
And then LinkedIn and Tiffany D. Thomas on Facebook and whatnot. So.
So where can we get the Tiffany we saw today? Because LinkedIn seems real professional. I want the one we saw.
LinkedIn is real clean.
Okay.
So you may not get fun Tiffany. You don't want this one. You don't get fired Tiffany on that one.
Oh, so this is fire Tiffany.
So Twitter is fired. Yeah,
okay, that's
get
the
that.
one I want.
And then depending on what's on that agenda at City Council, you might get it too.
Oh, okay, so we need to come in person.
You can. I think it's fun. The chambers are open, so we'd love to have. It's the people's house, and we have to get people comfortable with coming to their city hall, right, and getting familiar with who represents them and raising those questions. So I'm working on a variety of things. We have a series of affordable housing projects coming up on the agenda. Mayor Turner has been very intentional about complete communities investing in that. So, we are asking the question in the city and then also in the classroom, like what's the tipping point of investment before a neighborhood regenerates on its own? So from private and public dollars, we've been investing in these neighborhoods. A-Leaf Westwood, being in my district, is one of those complete communities. So, we are addressing affordability. We are addressing homelessness.
Wow.
We just received $100 million from the feds, from HUD, to continue our work. During COVID, Houston was the largest American city to house those, homeless individuals, unhoused individuals. And our HUD secretary visited us a couple of weeks ago and gave us an additional $45 million to do that work because we are leading that in the nation. So that's what we're doing in the community. Wow. In the classroom, I am grading papers and getting ready for finals and ready for this semester to end, and want to encourage any graduate or alumni from Prairie View or anyone that's watching this to consider our program. We are a leader in this work. We're leading, and we are producing productive people.
And you are definitely productive. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, I know one thing you're working on. You got to get this campaign done, but the other thing is you got to graduate. So yes. Where can they follow you, and how can they donate to your campaign, and what are you working on?
I'm running this campaign quite differently. I would appreciate your prayers. I would appreciate your advice. Thankfully, I don't need your money.
Okay.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
So I'm okay on that side.
That's a good thing.
But we have a lot of work to do, and that's my slogan. We have work to do, and we do. But the thing is not to get me there and leave. Yeah. Get me there and stay, and help me make this place a better place, so that when the students that are here now come back in 5 years, they can say, my God, look what my seed produced.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's great. That is awesome. Today has been fire. I encourage you to follow both of them. If you live in the city of Prairie View, please vote on May 7th, right?
May 7th.
May 7th, we need your vote. And tune in to next week. We'll have the graduate students of PVAMU, and that will be my guest panel next week. And we'll talk about why it's important for the Black community to get these graduate degrees, masters and doctorates. We need these degrees. If we want to continue to have a seat at the table, we want to make sure that we're making those qualifications, because we all have seen what Judge Jackson had to go through, and she had an abundance of qualifications. So we need to make sure that we're changing the table, but we're also qualified to sit there. So tune in next week also, when you can hear my podcast. It'll be back for the second season, and I'll have Dr. Billy Hawkins from the University of Houston on the podcast to talk about from the plantation to the football field, critical race theory, and how it impacts our sports and our athletes. Thank you both so much. This has been great. I'm fired up and ready to go. I hope you are too. Thank you for tuning in. Vikita out.